and start adding more geometry, like branching geometry to the shape, but we're not going to do that. Let me undo that. We are actually going to do it to the whole object, so I'm just going to go to object mode and go to edit mesh and go to extrude. Now we have this manipulator that pops up. If your manipulator is really tiny looking, you could use the plus and minus keys on the keyboard to make it bigger or smaller. I like to have mine about that size, and it stays the same size no matter if you zoom in or out, so keep that in mind. So you want to click on the blue axis. That's the axis that's like perpendicular to the surface, and you pull it out just a little bit. You don't want to push it in because we'll be turning the surface inside out. If you push it in, it turns black. You want to pull it outward. Oops, I just pulled it on the wrong direction and it made some weird shape. So make sure you're pulling on that blue arrow. Just pull it out a little bit, enough to get this thickness here. So now that we have the thickness, the next thing we're going to do is, let's go back to object mode. And we're going to smooth this. And when we say smooth it, it's going to divide each face one time, so each face will become 4. And then it's also going to round off the surface as well. So if I go to mesh and then go to smooth, you can see it subdivides the geometry. So we have twice as much geometry, and then it also kind of smooths the contours quite a bit. Now, if we look at the kind of rim of the bottle, we don't have a lot of geometry to get a nice kind of curved roundness or radius on that. So I'm going to undo the smooth. And let's actually add some edge loops here to add some more geometry around this rounded edge. This is something we didn't do in the class, but I think it's something we should do here. So what we could do is go to mesh tools and go to insert edge loop. And when you do that, you can click and drag on an edge, and it just, I'm left mouse clicking, and I'm going to insert an edge pretty close to the top on the outside. And then same thing on the inside, I'm going to click and drag pretty close to the top. So now we have these edges that'll kind of support the roundness here. So now when we go back to object mode, I'm going to use go back to my select tool. So we exit out of that edge loop insertion tool, go back to object mode, and let's go back to mesh smooth. Now we have we have more geometry there because there was more faces to begin with. So there's, now that it's subdivided it, we even have more faces, and we get a nicer rounded edge. So there's our bottle. And if you look on the right, we have a bunch of construction history. So before we just started out, we had a poly cylinder, and then we deleted some faces, then we moved some points around. That's the poly tweak, and then we extruded some faces, and then we inserted some edge loops, and then we smoothed it again. So that's all the construction history, and Maya is storing all this in memory, all the different states of this bottle. So we want to, that's useful while you're modeling, but once you're kind of done, you want to bake all this stuff into the geometry. So the way you do that is you go to edit at the top here, go to delete by type, and then delete just history. So when you do that, it gets rid of all this construction history, and we're just left with this 3D mesh that Maya is not concerned anymore with how it was made. It's just concerned with all the points that make up the object. So we're saving on memory, and we're saving on file size, and this will speed up our scene. Right now our scene's pretty quick, but as we start to work with bigger objects and characters and things like that, you need to save on memory every way you can. And then also, let's go ahead and name this. So let's double click in the outliner and call this bottle. Now if I undo that, hit Z, I could also rename it in the channel box. So I could just go over here in the channel box and double click on the name P cylinder 1 and just name it bottle there. And let's save this. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we have a project for this. So probably should have done this before we started, but hey, anytime's better than never doing it, right? So I'm going to go to my Finder, and you're on a PC, so it's going to be different. So there's thumb drives that we have during the class, but if you're using a lab, I don't know if you'll have access to those thumb drives. You should, and they have your names on them. So I guess Justin will help you out with that. But yeah, get your thumb drive, and I think it was the name of the drive was like EFAIN, like EFAIN. I don't know where that name comes from, but that's the name of the drive. And you go to My Computer and you find it that way, and you just right click and do new folder. I'm gonna call it, I already have a week 3, but I'm gonna call this like week 302 or something, you know, whatever you want to name it, and put your name on it. So I'll put _ Jeff. And so we created this folder, so now we could minimize that, and then inside Maya, go to File, Set Project, and I'm going to navigate to that folder where, you know, to your thumb drive or wherever where you made that folder you just made, and click that, and then hit Set. So now Maya knows, and then I'm going to set Create Default Workspace, so Maya knows that this is a Maya workspace. And now whenever I go to File, Save As, or go to Open a File, it's going to know to get it from there. So we'll do Save Scene As, and oops, let me go into there, and then I'll call this like bottle, you know, _ mug or something. Maybe 001, because maybe we'll save different versions of this. So let's hit Save, or hit Enter. Cool, so now let's make the mug. So let's just grab the bottle and let's move it over to the side. We still kind of want to see it, so we have a size reference. We could hide it if you select your bottle and go over to the channel box. We have Translate, Rotate, and Scale. The last one is Visibility. If you click on that and hit 0 to turn that off, hit Enter, it turns off visibility. Now we can still, in the outliner, see the bottle here, but it's like grayed out. So we could select it in the outliner again and go back in the channel box and hit 1 to turn it back on. So it's like 0 is off, 1 is on, kind of thing. But let's leave it on. Let's leave it just moved over to the side. Let's create another cylinder. And we'll do the same thing. So let's do 10 subdivisions on the height and 5 subdivisions on the bottom. We probably don't need that many on the bottom, but they'll be there in case we need them. Again, let's delete the top faces. So I'm just going to go to face. I think this is my favorite way to kind of do this the quickest. Just select like this with your box, and then hold down Control to deselect those side faces. And now we're left, and just double check your selection. Make sure there's no stray faces, and then hit backspace to delete those. Now we could right click and go to Vertex, and let's select all the bottom vertices. And again, rotate around, make sure you have no other stray vertices selected, and turn on soft selection. So I hit tap B on the keyboard real quick, hold down B, middle mouse drag to change the fall off to go up most of the cup, and then we could scale in, you know, those bottom vertices to kind of get this mug profile. And then we want to make the handle of the mug. So first, let's grab all the vertices and move them up so it's sitting on the axis. Oh, and this is a mistake I made during the class, was I forgot to add the thickness before I added the handle. So that kind of tripped me up. So let's go ahead and add the thickness to this. So let's go to Object Mode, and let's go to Edit Mesh, and go to Extrude. Again, we're going to click on that blue arrow and just drag it out until you have, you know, whatever thickness you think is appropriate for a mug. Perfect. And then because we're adding thickness, it's kind of pushing down a little bit. All we got to do is just right click and go to Vertex mode again, grab all the vertices and just move it up again so it's on top of the the